Hey, Lori, happy Sunday.
Yeah, happy Sunday. How are you today?
Good. It's spring break, so mellow, man.
What'd you say?
It's spring break, so
Oh,
mellow.
yeah. So are you off for the whole week?
Yeah, I got offered to work, but at this other thing, but I said no. So I was like, I need a break.
Yeah, I'm doing a teeny PD thing. Well, I'm doing that Hope thing
Yeah, no, that looks cool.
but that's not that much. It's like just a couple of hours in the morning on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So anyway, it's not too bad. Oh,
Yeah, I've just been taking too many things on, and I'm like, you know what? I need to like
yeah. Well, plus when you changed grades, that's a lot of work, right? It must
Oh
be
yeah, no.
a lot of work to
Well,
change to do
and
that.
we have like colo at my house. It needs to be dug up and then, like taken care of so that I can hand out the huli before it goes bad. And like, so, and they're unique strains. So I don't want to see them go, you know, but are you excited to teach your class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday?
Well, I'm not really teaching because it's like there's three facilitators, so it's I'm not like the main driver of that. I'm mainly going to be doing some coaching work.
Recording. And you can share screen, yeah? You got the ability? Ooh, yes, you do. Mahalo. Okay.
Oh, sorry. So, sorry, I guess I'm at my last slide. Give me a sec. It's blocking my ability to.
Oh, it's a Jamboard.
Yeah, I really like the Jamboards. You guys really got me going on those because I was in kindergarten last year and you don't do Jamboards in kindergarten, for the most part because it's too much technology. So, okay. My presentation is on, I really like been trying to master the noticing, sense making, and modeling, which from a previous class is gathering, reasoning, and communicating. So what I was focused on this quarter was how to create student buy-in and drive student scientists to create and collect quality data in grade 6. So that's how I kind of felt like I brought three-dimensional learning into mine. Sorry, the box keeps going. Okay, there we go. Okay, so what I learned going in a couple weeks was I didn't give them a rubric because something that I saw that we did in the spam Musabi thing is having students create their own rubrics. So I kind of let them just like, hey, what are you gonna draw for when you're actually doing your data collection? And then what I did is I looked for quality student examples and I would present them every week and we would discuss it as a group. And what I noticed over time was a huge, was a huge growth. So if you look at the example right here, for example, this student started off only scoring partial points, then grew to scoring even more points. And as you notice, their answers and their drawings are improving as they kind of go along. And so I felt like that was a huge improvement because I feel like sometimes as teachers, if we pigeonhole them and say, these are the things that we're expecting, then you don't get to see the exciting things that they come up with kind of on their own. So this is another example where you can see a student that's struggling at the beginning where I'm putting question marks because I'm not sure. And a lot of the students didn't even know how to measure in centimeters or millimeters. So that was like a big step growth. If you notice, they're actually scoring more points than the total on week 7 here. And that's because I came up with the idea of bonus points, where if they were using colors and labels, which was something nobody was doing, they could earn extra additional points as well as being organized. And I noticed this huge jump, like students were much more willing to work because I work with 6th graders and we've had a really hard time getting them to get back into learning this year. They've been kind of like this, hands off. So this was like a pretty big growth for them. What I noticed is kind of like my own growth as a teacher. I didn't use Google Classroom last year. So as you can see, in explaining what the expectation is, if you look over here on week 1, I kind of started off with a really vague idea of like what was expected for the student data collection. And then I moved to a little bit more clear. And then as I started seeing the student growth, you can see in week 7 where all of a sudden it's like 2 points for quality drawings, but there's a bonus point if you do color and label. And I saw the kids get really excited. And then all of a sudden, bam, I see like the improvement. So I wish I'd done that earlier. I think that's a huge growth for making but I wouldn't have known that, like I know color and labels are important, but I feel like when students identify it on their own, then they kind of like, they're more willing to do it. And then if you notice, what was really funny in week 8, I didn't offer any bonus points. And then they brought it at me and they're like, well, we want to earn bonus points again. And so I was like, okay, well, it's kind of unorganized. Most people's answers are unorganized right now. I go, how about 2 bonus points for organization? And so that brought up a whole idea of like, when I'm giving data, it has to be in a way that people can actually read it without having to like look all around. So that was kind of from the bean life cycle. I wanted to show, now that I did that on the bean life cycle, I was quicker on the compost. And so I started looking right away for student examples so that I could come up with a quality example to drive for the next week. And so what was really cool is we talked about green and brown materials. So that's actually using scientific language, you know, like from the actual lesson. And so I found this one student, I used that to kind of drive everybody else. And then if you can notice, the jump that happened is then they started to say, okay, well, now we need pictures as well. So they were kind of applying what they were doing in the bean life cycle as well as in the compost. And you can see just the growth. So we kind of went down the same foxhole, like this is really interesting. This is a student that's struggling, as you can see, and then look at the growth just in their data collection abilities over 4 weeks. Now it's
So
not
this
perfect,
student
but
focused on one thing, look in there, yeah, they really honed in on that watermelon and just looked at it all the time.
oh, that's a great idea.
I mean, no, this is what I'm reflecting from
Yeah.
this student's data, that they were focused on this watermelon and they tracked it every week.
Yeah, that was
Cool.
their focus. And I was trying to really get them to identify the difference between what was happening between the green and the brown material. And so if you notice at the bottom, they actually created like an organizational system where it's green and brown. Like to me, that's like, whoa, I would never have thought of that, you know? And so I feel like giving 6th graders, you see their growth. And so here was just another example. If you look, this is really cool. This student came up with the idea of showing temperature going up and down with arrows, which I would never have thought of in the temperature area, because I was like, whoa, that's a pretty neat idea. And if you notice, their drawings are getting much more labeled so that a scientist could come in and actually look at their data. Because that's what I kept saying is like, is someone going to understand what you're writing about? And so you can see my growth again, the same way where it started off kind of vague and then it grew. I got a lot better this time. And then of course they wanted bonus points. And so that's where I came up with the same idea, because like, who cares? I had a point or 2 here or there, right? Like if they're working without me chasing them, that's kind of good. What I learned though is when they're outside, you have to have a printed out copy, because I try to indoors and outdoors, like of what the requirements are, or they forget between the time where you go over it, between the time you go inside and outside. So that's definitely something that I want to work on. And Lori, you brought up the idea of a checklist. So that's something I definitely, I'm going to continue to do. Now, we haven't gotten into the actual modeling or sense making, and I'm wondering, will quality data collection lead to more student buy-in and better quality models and sense making? So I feel like that kind of leads into that next discussion, because now we can go backwards and say, okay, look at your data. Now, when you did your models, did you have a similar approach, or did you go back to like the black and white, really unorganized kind of thing, or even coming up with a rubric as we're working in the modeling area? And so my question for the other teachers was like, how do we as teachers further involve students to create quality scientific data and models? And the way that I like really learned is when we did the Spin-Moves-Subi one, I never thought of like broke the mouth and stuff like that. But if you came up with a rubric on your own, it would have been kind of boring, right? Like sometimes, but when you involve students and teachers, I really think that's a huge growth. And so I just, in some of my reflections, I was like thinking about a collaborative student rubric, student reflection on data collection. I really like that. That was one of the presentations that Lori and I had, where they look at over the weeks how they approved, because I feel like that would lead into the modeling later. So I'm probably going to do some questions based on that for my kids. Like a weekly self-assessment. This is something I tried in week 8, is I had the kids actually score themselves based on the point totals prior to me doing it, so that I got an idea of what they thought they scored. And what was really funny is they honestly scored themselves harder than I would have scored them. So it was like a really interesting opportunity to discuss. And then, as I discussed before, like outdoor rubrics or checklists, so that the students have it printed out and they're kind of ready to go. So yeah, that's kind of my presentation. And so I feel like that's where 3-dimensional learning kind of came alive for me, is like actually getting students to be quality producers in their data collection. So
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious about, after they finish collecting the data for those examples that you shared, like about the sense making piece, when they could get to the cause and effect piece, like how did that go?
We haven't gotten there yet, to be honest. Like my challenge, and I'm actually writing about it in my class right now, is we only have 2 45-minute slots per week. And so I'm getting a lot of pushback because my kids spent the entire first quarter and about half the second quarter outdoors in the garden the entire time. And like, we're still working in the garden, but it's not as hands-on in them like working with things. And so they're like, well, Mr. John, come on, we have to at least have one day. And so I'm running into a lot of, which I love, which is super cool, but they're not as willing to give me as like I'm trying to find like a happy balance. And that's kind of what I've been writing about.
Yeah. That's great that they want to go outside. Just thoughts about applying this idea of high quality data collection into something around citizen science might be motivating for them. Or even, so this is something maybe we can set up when we do this PDE3 again. The opportunity, if we know that 2 schools are doing the same lessons, the opportunity for actually students to share with each other, because now we have the ability to WebEx or Zoom or whatever, just a thought of knowing that, giving them, like you said, John, that opportunity to present to someone else and then get that feedback. That's not just a teacher feedback or classroom feedback, but this is feedback from another teacher or another class. And then able to compare and contrast the quality of data might be kind of fun and exciting, for students.
Yeah, that could be even an opportunity to use like that unruler thing. If you have people in different locations, we're using Unruler as part of the Hope project to get people to communicate with each other. People could post, the observations. There could be pictures, there could be discussion. That could be kind of cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about too is because they've taken on, like, basically the 6th graders are the stewards of our garden, where they set up beds and they prep beds when students need to go out, like in the different grade levels, and actually work out there. That maybe they could actually even start doing presentations on what they're actually learning, like connecting to like the cross-cutting concepts, so like patterns as well as systems and systems models. You know what I mean? If I could get them in that direction, then I feel like they're not only just setting up beds, but then they're also teaching the younger students in grades, like could be K-3, could be K-4, you know what I mean? So yeah,
that'd be really, wow, I like that idea a lot.
So, but I'm just like, to be honest, this is the first year that we've actually had the garden where all 14 garden beds are being used by different grade levels at this point. So, and they help set it up, and an after school elective. So it's pretty neat to actually see that. And so I'm excited to see what it'll be next year once they shut it down and then bring it back. You know what I mean? So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you very much, John, for your presentation. And I will stop. Yeah, yay.
Cool. Well, thanks for pulling me into the class.
Oh, it's still recording, Ming Wei.
Strive harder.
This is still recording.